Rabbi Soetendorp is Rabbi Emeritus of the liberal Jewish community in The Hague. He has served his community for more than 5 decades. As Vice Chairman of the Global Forum of Spiritual and Parliamentary Leaders, he is very active on the global scene, promoting human rights and sustainability. He is an activist, a thinker, a writer, a poet, and a teacher. Born in Amsterdam in 1943, in the midst of the razzias and deportations, his testimony recalls the bravery of his parents, who entrusted him as a young baby to the resistance to be brought to safety, and about being reunited with his parents after the end of World War II.
My testimony today is filled with love and reverence for our fellow Jews who were killed during the Shoah. Zichronam livracha, their memory an enduring blessing, and dedicated to those rescuers who were prepared even to pay with their lives for our safety. Babies like me and my beloved wife, Sira. End of May, one of the last big razzias in the Retiefstraat in the east of Amsterdam. They broke also through our door. My father stood frozen next to the packed suitcases. Too late. He had been a brilliant student at a rabbinic seminary in Amsterdam, a spiritual leader of a congregation in the East, and principal of a secondary Jewish school. He had been asked by the Jewish Council in 1941 to share the news of the young men who had been assembled and taken to concentration camp Mauthausen, who had caused the February strike. The fate was being killed. And my father was asked to share this together with the psychiatrist Musaf, walking the streets of the Jewish quarter. Every corner of the street, people started crying. And ever since, he had pleaded with everyone to find a hiding place. But for himself and for my mother, there were the parents who didn't want, and there was my birth. The SS man approached the cradle and looked in my eyes and said, "Schade, dass ein Jude ist. What a pity that this is a Jewish child." And my father retorted, "He is fortunate to be a Jewish child, because whatever will happen to him, he will never be a son of murderers." The man slapped my father, shouted abuse, "Dirty Jews, we cannot take you now. Clean yourself, we come back tomorrow," shouting and disappearing. When a gaze of a baby can still penetrate in a heart filled with darkness of indoctrination, nothing is lost. He staged our refuge, because by dawn, my mother had put me in the baby carriage, which then was taken by an unknown woman under the direction of Tini van der Bilt of the resistance movement. Out of sight, my parents another direction. I was taken in a suitcase with holes in it in a train to Awraham. There I was safe, but not entirely, because neighbors started to speak, and so I had to be smuggled out and brought nearby Velp. Velp was an enabling place where so many people were taken in because leadership expanded itself in the hearts of people. The door was opened to me by Ria van der Kemp, a woman born in Germany, married now to a Dutchman, who had said in the Catholic Church, "Yes, I want to save children from the madness and the hatred of these Germans." There was a problem, because there was another girl, Joke van Gelder, already 11 years old. It was not possible to have a baby and her in the same family. They found another place for her, and fortunately she survived. We were cared by Ria and by Bertus. As it is told, at a certain moment also when a sister came, Yvonne Roselaar, a year older than I was. She sometimes wandered around and neighbors saw her. There were members of the NSB, of the fascist party. And my Ria, my Moeke, was able to convince the neighbors not to betray us. And Bertus, a nephew, told me that one day he came to the home of his uncle and he saw the uncle sitting with me on his knees because, as the nephew said, he loved you so much. He put me down and then showed that under his sweater he had a kind of flask, a kind of container. It was filled with milk. In this way he smuggled milk for Yvonne and myself and was always there to help. In the meantime, my parents had found a refuge in a farm in Brabant. They didn't know where I was, but from time to time they received a postcard and it always said, "Bobby is playing. Bobby is asleep." And therefore they knew that I was safe. Their Shalometje was now Bobby. But one day the postcard stopped and my mother was desperate and she went on a train, risking everything to find out from people in Amsterdam where I was. She was sent back with the terrible news that they had taken me, but she didn't dare to tell my father. And then one day a postcard came. "Bobby is playing." She fainted. A miracle. At the end of the war for Velp, in the midst of April 1945, we were in the cellar, and here I encounter my own memories. Blood, broken glass, shouting and screaming, fire. I could for a long time not put those fragments together. But I heard that my foster father Bertus had climbed the stairs to the outside to help with quenching fires that came from the grenades that came coming. And I must have climbed also to be out of the open. And then a grenade came, and Bertus decided to protect me. He was killed. An enduring burden? No, a liberating love. My father came to the door at the end of May 1945. and Moeke said, "You have come to take your son. Here he is." My father took me to my mother, who was just on the brink of birth of my brother David Menachem Baruch. And I encounter my memories. Running out of my home, getting lost in orphaned Amsterdam, not knowing where I belong. It is remarkable that the heritage of my parents was to build and rebuild Jewish communities. And I was so fortunate to find Sira, who had been saved by 7 different families. And together we have tried to continue that road. And one day I received, after the death of my father, many years after, my father died just before the re-inauguration of the former Portuguese synagogue in The Hague. Many years later, the letter that I received was from Amichai Hepner. I didn't know him. He wrote, "I was hidden in a farm not far from your parents. I thought you died. But your father, I have to tell you, wrote on request of my father a kind of guide for Judaism. Hebrew lessons, Bible lessons, sermons, pictures. And I still have them. I have just given them to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And later on, I saw them in the museum. And the surprise was that they are written quickly in handwriting, that there are block letters sometimes. Sometimes it's Hashem, the name of God, Awraham. But this passage engraved in my heart. Note, my young friend, Na'aseh Adam. Let us create the human being. God has created the human being in the world together. That he gave the human being the task to perfect creation. So that creation would be a world filled with cooperation, love, truth, and righteousness. Incomprehensible. The indomitable spirit of the Jewish people to continue with hope, partners in creation. And my father and mother and all who survived tried to build and rebuild communities. And I can say with Emunah Shlema that I believe with a complete faith that together Israel will be saved and will have peace with its neighbors. And that in cooperation we will create a world where no one is degraded. And it will happen that then God's prayer will be fulfilled by our deeds and the deeds of our children's children. Amen.